Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us here at Glasgow Science Centre's Curious About the Human Body Online Festival. My name is Patrick. I work at Glasgow Science Centre, and I am delighted to be hosting this event, training and competing in Paralympic swimming, with former swimmer Paul Noble, who, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, won 4 gold medals, 8 silver medals, and 2 bronze medals at the Paralympics. Hopefully I got that right, Paul. If you have any questions while you're watching this stream, please feel free to add them into the live comments feature on YouTube. But for now, Paul, over to you.
Thanks very much, Patrick, for that introduction, and thanks very much, everyone, for inviting me to talk to you this afternoon. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself and my career in Paralympic sport, and I haven't really got a lot of time to cover everything this afternoon, so it'll be a little bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I'm sure you'll find it interesting. I was born with a condition called osteogenesis imperfecta, and that's commonly known as brittle bone disease. And I've had around 50 breaks over the years, various parts of the body. But growing up, it was mostly my legs that were affected. But I was always keen on sport, either playing or watching. Myself and my brother used to watch the football matches, and we used to play outside in our garden as well. And sometimes, don't tell my mother, by the way, if you ever see her, that I used to sneak out, even when I was in plaster with a broken leg, and try and play in goals at football with my mates outside. So I was into absolutely everything as a youngster. I had a pretty much normal upbringing. And it was only really when I was recovering from a broken leg at the age of about 10 or 11, when the doctor told me that I should be doing some exercises to build up some muscles. He said cycling was very good, but maybe a little bit too high impact for me. So he suggested swimming, and that is what encouraged me to get into the sport. My high school were incredibly supportive. They gave me access to the school pool, and I also became involved with my local disability sport branch, Disability Sport Fife, and that's where I had my first taste of competitive sport and first heard of the Paralympic Games. And can I have the next slide, please? And there's me in the early days. I haven't changed much. That's in a very early competition, one of my first outings in competitive swimming. The title of this event is Curious About the Human Body, and I think the Paralympics are such a great example of how diverse the human body can actually be. They were started back in Stoke Mandeville Hospital in 1948, the same day as the London Olympics opened. They were originally for men and women with spinal injuries, but have now grown into a worldwide event for other athletes too, including athletes with amputations, visual impairments, cerebral palsy, learning disabilities, and other disabilities such as dwarfism and brittle bones. And of course, I'm biased, but I think swimming is probably the purest of all the Paralympic sports, simply because all you have in the pool is a swimming costume, a pair of goggles, and a swim cap. That's it. You're not allowed to wear your artificial limbs in competition. You don't have the benefit of your high-tech running blades or state-of-the-art wheelchairs or bikes. You just have you. And you have to make the most of what you've got in the pool. And Paralympic swimmers are very, very versatile. There's always a great deal of innovation. They always adapt to make the most out of what they have and what they can use. And it often means that some techniques you see in para-swimming would never be considered for an able-bodied athlete, but for Paralympians, it works really well. In my early days of competition, my training wasn't that extensive, but I did enjoy swimming, and I was in the water a couple of times a week. And Disability Sport Fife entered me into competition. I usually competed against a good friend of mine, Andrew, who was an amputee. He lived nearby. We were about the same age, so we had a really good rivalry. And a real turning point for my swimming career was when Andrew received a letter identifying him with someone who had potential to make the 1984 Paralympic Games in New York. But I didn't get a letter. And that really bothered me because my competitor had got something and I didn't. And I thought, right, I'm going to have to do something about this. I mean, Andrew trained harder than me at that point, so he really deserved it. But I knew if I wanted to get somewhere in the sport that I would have to do something about it. So that's when I joined my local mainstream swimming club, Glenrothes Swimming Club, and I never really looked back. A couple of years after that, we both made the team in '84, and it was Andrew's one and only games, but for me it was just the start of things to come. But the Paralympics in those days were a real different beast than they are these days. It was held in a university campus in Long Island in New York. There were very few spectators that attended, and the media coverage back here was only a 1-hour documentary style program on the BBC about 6 months after the event. But it was still a memorable games for me. Pulling on my first GB tracksuit was a real highlight, and another highlight was, surprisingly, I came away with 2 medals at the games for the 2 relay events, which was a real bonus. And it was such a good experience being away with the team that it really gave me a taste for more. And there were no real such things as full-time athletes in those days. Everyone was either in education or had a job, and there was little support. So it was hard work. I mean, I had a full-time job throughout my swimming career, and my training regime varied over the years, but a typical week would be maybe 3 or 4 morning sessions in the pool, maybe 5 or 6 kind of late afternoon or evening sessions, 3 sessions in the gym. So basically, it was my life, but I loved it. It was a kind of addiction, I suppose. But the feeling of camaraderie with your teammates, whether it be with the GB team or whether it be with my local club, was amazing. And the feeling of being so fit was incredible. So I loved it, and I couldn't get enough of it. I went on to compete at a further 4 Paralympic Games. We have the next slide, please. My first one in Seoul in '88, and there's a picture of me from Barcelona in '92, which was very much my favourite games, and that's me coming off the medal podium. I've just got my flowers and my gold medal there for my very favourite swim of my entire Paralympic career. So it's a very special picture, that one. I like looking back on that one. Atlanta in the USA was another my 4th games in 1996, and finally Sydney in 2000 was my final games. I ended my Paralympic career with 15 medals in total, including the 4 gold medals, as Patrick mentioned earlier. I had a very long career, and I was fortunate not to have many injuries over that time, but I think being active helped my condition enormously. I went from someone who had 2 or 3 breaks every year to having 1 break in maybe 7 or 8 years. I did have 2 breaks in quick succession towards the end of my career, and that probably told me it was time to call it a day, that the body was giving up on me. But I was very fortunate throughout my career, and that's why I lasted so long, I think. And during that time I was competing, I'd seen the Paralympic Games grow from the university campus in New York to thousands of spectators attending the Sydney Games. The Sydney Games are used the same venues and village as the Olympic Games. And there were daily TV shows about the games on the BBC, a real transformation over the period of my career. But I think one of the major landmarks for Paralympic sport in Britain actually happened after the Atlanta Games in 1996. The Olympic team in Atlanta won only 1 gold medal, and that was Steve Redgrave and Matthew Pinsent in the rowing. There was no other gold medals for the Olympic team. The Paralympic team did a little bit better. And following those games, the government decided to put lottery money into sport in the UK. And a condition of that, the governing bodies getting the lottery money, were that funding had to include Paralympic sport in their programmes. So that immediately meant better access to things such as nutritional advice, psychology, medical support, video analysis, as well as increased pool time and the opportunity for athletes to train full time. And what a difference that made to the GB team. I mean, we did have access to this type of advice before, but it was very ad hoc. And nowadays, the top athletes are incredibly well supported and provided really with every service that they need. And the UK was one of the first countries in the world to do that. So that's part of the reason why we have been so successful in Paralympic Games in recent years. Can I have the next slide, please? I finished my swimming career at the Commonwealth Games in 2002, but I was fortunate in a way that my retirement coincided with an increase in coverage of the Paralympics in the UK. So I was asked by the BBC to co-commentate on the Athens Games in 2004. So I jumped at the chance because a lot of Paralympians at that time, we didn't really like some of the commentators that used to commentate on Paralympic sport because it was all about the brave Paralympic athletes overcoming adversity and doing really well just to actually physically do sport in the first place. But we were elite athletes. We wanted to be celebrated for our performances in the pool or on the track. So to be part of the coverage gave me a little bit of an opportunity to influence things in a small way. But hopefully things have got better since those days. And I was only one of 3 Paralympians to have this chance in 2004 to commentate on the Athens Games for the BBC. But before that, the media didn't use Paralympians at all in their coverage. But now look what's happened. The Winter Games that are taking place in Beijing this past couple of weeks. Channel 4 were very proud to announce that all their presenters for the Winter Games have a disability. So a real massive change. And can I have the next slide, please? And I can't really give a Paralympic presentation without mentioning London 2012. I mentioned Channel 4 there. I was asked to work for Channel 4 in London in 2012, and I think they've done a great job covering and raising the profile of the Paralympics in the UK. It was another landmark event, London. Many, many happy memories of the London Games. I'm sure many people have. Great crowds and amazing games and real extensive coverage on TV and radio. And that, again, was a personal highlight for me, you see in the picture. Very proud moment for myself when I was asked to carry the Paralympic torch at London 2012 on Tower Bridge as part of the torch relay. So it was an iconic moment for Paralympic sport. Now, again, I was really proud to be part of it. So I know I'm running out of time. So just to bring us up to date, I commentated on the Tokyo Games last year for Channel 4, and I've now commentated on 5 games for either BBC or Channel 4. So 5 games as a swimmer, 5 games as a commentator now. Nice and symmetrical, but there are a few things in the pipeline still. I hope I'm not going to be finished just yet. Paris 2024 is only a couple of years away, so I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I can continue my Paralympic journey at those next games in France. Thank you very much for listening to me. I think I'm just slightly over time, so I'm not too bad with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paul. No, you're absolutely fine for time. That was a fascinating presentation, and it's so cool to actually be speaking to somebody who's experienced a games. Do you keep your medals on or around you all the time? Because if I'd been as successful as you, I'd be wearing them every single day.
I don't keep them. I don't keep them on every time. I have got them beside me just now, just in case you did ask the question. I can show you a few of them. I did 5 games, and I was fortunate enough to win a medal in each of the 5 games. So I can. It's like a history of Paralympic medals over the decade. There's the America one there. Not sure if you can see it with a blurred screen. Oh,
I can see that.
That's American USA. One. USA in 1984. The Korean one from 1988. When I won 3 gold medals.
Still so shiny as well.
Yeah. I keep these ones handy because I do take them to schools and Rotary clubs and various places.
Oh, brilliant.
So they're not stored away. And there's the Barcelona one, which is a very much favourite race for me. It was a race where I wasn't the favourite to win, and I really I excelled myself that day because I went a time that I'd never had done before, and I never did again.
What do you think that was down to?
I don't know. It was just the occasion. Barcelona was amazing. It was amazing games. I was probably as fit as I'd ever been, and I just managed to raise my game on the day, and to win it. I won it by quite a long way, 3/100ths of a second. So it was by a fingernail. But
it
was enough. And it was amazing because when we finished it, I was right next to the guy. We finished a Dutchman. He was a big rival of mine. And even though it was so close at the end, we both knew that I'd won.
Wow.
Because we couldn't see the scoreboard, but he had his head in his hands, and I was convinced I'd won. And I wear glasses. I've worn glasses for years, but the scoreboard was the other side of the pool, so 50 meters plus away. So I was kind of just straining my eyes to try and see, but I knew from his reaction what the result was straight away.
I think while you've been doing your presentation, we've had some questions come through. So if I could have the first one up. Oh, that's a nice one to start with. Paul, what do you love about swimming?
I think initially it was, my legs were never that great when I was growing up. I had a lot of breaks. And when I got into the water, it kind of gave you a little bit of freedom. It gave me more freedom than I had in the land. I couldn't really run. There were occasions I couldn't walk. I tried to stay on my feet, of course, as much as I could. And you're always encouraged to do that after a break anyway, to get up and start to work the muscles again. But in the water, you could just go in, and it was the sense of freedom really in the water. And I was quite good at it as well. I've got fairly long arms, which are a real advantage in swimming. I'm quite light, so I can propel myself in the water. So I my body shape was quite good. I was a little bit more muscular in the day when I was training, so I was quite strong relative to my body weight. So it was a good sport for me. A good sport.
Fantastic. Could we have the next question, please? Were there mornings when your alarm went off and you really didn't want to jump into a swimming pool? And if there were mornings like that, what was your motivation to get up and go anyway? Because I imagine your training regime right at the start of your career must have been pretty punishing.
Yeah, it was. I think my wife will tell you every morning I don't really want to jump out of bed, regardless if I'm going into a pool or not. But I think it was really the motivation was I used to split my training down, into kind of short-term goals, short-term achievements, because there's no point in saying, okay, the Paralympics are 2 years away, right? I'm going to train every day for 2 years to make the games. It doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. You burn out. But I used to just say, right, okay, the next 6 weeks, I'm going to do 90% of all the sessions. And if I can achieve that in the next 6 weeks, I know I'm on the right track. 100% is great. And quite often I did achieve 100%, but, there are reasons where you don't make sessions for whatever, your life gets in the way. Mm-hmm. But that was my target. So 6 weeks was kind of my period. And 6 weeks is achievable. It's not a long time. And it's not far away that you think, oh, I'm never going to make it, I'm never going to get there. But you can do it, and you break it down into 6 weeks chunks, and then you're on the next 6 weeks again, and it's like you're starting afresh. It's not like a continuous grind. And that was really the way that I managed to get up out of bed in the morning. I mean, once I was up, I was absolutely fine in the water, and you set yourself up for the day. Those of you that go in the pool or go out running early in the morning, it's a struggle to get out there. But once you've done it, it sets you up for the day, definitely.
So you're speaking there about the sort of, that must have taken a lot of mental strength and motivation though to do it. How much of swimming and sport at that level is to do with you mentioned in your presentation, like psychology and sort of the mental strength behind the sport. How much of that would you put it down to?
Oh, I think massively. Yeah, I mean, you can't win medals at the big games on mental strength alone. You have to have your physical attributes, but it does kind of make that extra kind of 5-10% that gets you ahead of someone, maybe by 3/100ths of a second in a very close race. If those are the additional things. So I mean, it's massively important. And I do remember going back to that race when I won by 3/100ths of a second. I think I quite often, I I quite often speak. I had a conversation with another guy who was another competitor. I was competing against a Dutchman, as I said, and he said to me, speaking against a Swedish guy, as we were actually coming up for the race when I was getting changed into my costume for the race, and he says, "Oh, you swimming tonight?" I says, "Yeah, I'm in the final tonight, 200 individual medley," and he said, "Oh, who you against?" I said, "I'm against Alwyn de Groot, who was the guy who was the Dutchman." He says, "He's the world record holder." And the Swedish guy said to me, he says, "Oh, yeah, Alwyn, yeah, very, very good swimmer, great swimmer. But he's not unbeatable." And in my mind, it was like, you know what? He's right. He's right. And I went out to that race on cloud nine, right up here, with brimming with confidence.
And the rest is history.
Just simply because of that conversation, I think. Well,
that's amazing.
That had a part of it.
Could we have the next question, please? Oh, this is appropriate as well. I guess not the 3/100ths of a second race, but no. How nervous were you before your Paralympic debut? And what was it like? What was going through your head right before the race started?
That's a long time ago now. You're asking me to come back. But I think we were just kind of ready to get going. I had a few events which I actually took place on my first day of Paralympic competition. I didn't just have one event on that day. I think I had 3 events on that particular day. The lead up to it was great. We went to America, and it was the first time I'd really been away from home, pretty much, going to New York, and just seeing the games get set up, going training in the Paralympic pool. It was just really exciting. So yeah, I think I was pretty nervous on that one. It's difficult to remember, but standing up for that first race, I'm sure the butterflies must have been going, because it was a big event. It was a big event for me, full stop. The trip was incredible. The games were incredible. And that's what made me come back for more.
And had you done a lot of tournaments before the Paralympics? I take it you must have been doing regional and national competitions.
We did regional and national competitions, yeah. We did the local competitions, and we went to Scottish competitions, and we represented Scotland in the the British Championships. But I'd never done an international before. I was kind of a bit of a surprise pick, really, because I was quite young for my first games.
How old were you then?
And they took me. I was 17 when I got selected. When the selection first came through, and they kind of took me as a potential for the future. So
a wild card.
Yeah, somebody must have seen something in me in those days, and yeah, hopefully I managed to repay them a bit.
I think we've got another question. Did the sport change a lot from your Paralympic debut in 1984 to your final appearance in Sydney 2000? I think you mentioned this a little bit in your presentation, but maybe you could go into a wee bit more detail.
Yeah, I mean, the Paralympics themselves really changed incredibly from that university campus, as I said in the presentation in New York. It was kind of in the back of beyond, really. There was no one really knew it was going on. In the UK, I don't think anyone knew that the Paralympics was going on, and no one had hardly heard of the Paralympic Games, I think, in those days. And fast forward to Sydney in 2000, where I think the sports minister for the Sydney Games was a politician, and he described the Sydney Games as a 60-day festival of sport. So it was from when the teams started to arrive for the Olympic Games, right through to the end when the teams started to go away for the Paralympic Games, which was some 2 months later. So it wasn't just the Paralympic Games, which were unknown really in the wider world. It was like lumping the Paralympic Games in with the Olympic Games in Sydney. Mm-hmm. And the Australian public, really responded to that. Their 60-day festival of sport in Sydney, and just they came out in their absolute droves in Sydney 2000, and it was the kind of first one that you really saw mass spectators at it. Thousands and thousands of people paying to get in to see the Paralympic Games, which was amazing. There was a little bit of that in Barcelona and in Seoul as well. But Seoul tended to be like organised groups that came in, whereas Sydney, it was the general public that came in. And the media coverage as well, which I mentioned, there was nothing in 84, and slowly throughout the years it built up. And in Sydney, they had that daily programme. I think it was shown the next day, simply because of the time difference in Sydney. I think they showed it the next day on BBC, which you would never have thought in 84 when we started out.
Amazing. I think we've got one more question. So you've got medals in different styles of swimming, I believe. So how did you divide your training time between different strokes? For example, how much time would you spend on back crawl or front crawl?
And most of the training that we did was on front crawl. I think that's the fastest stroke. It's kind of the stroke that people use to build up their fitness, I think. And that was a technique that our club employed. It was mostly front crawl training. But there were specialists. You got a chance to kind of specialise in various aspects of the strokes in various sessions. So sometimes they would do like a breaststroke session, or you would get the choice of what stroke you did. So the butterfly swimmers would do a little bit of butterfly.
What was your favourite one, Paul?
Well, it kind of changed throughout the year. I was a medley swimmer. I was a distance freestyle swimmer and a medley swimmer. So I trained a lot on freestyle just to get the stamina for the distance event. So I did 400 freestyle. And I was a medley swimmer as well. So I did all 4 strokes. Backstroke was probably my weakest stroke. I was quite a strong butterflyer. My breaststroke really came on. I worked hard on my breaststroke because breaststroke's a slower stroke, so you spend more time on it in a medley. So it's very important to kind of work the breaststroke so you don't lose much time. And front crawl, I was a strong front crawler, so I was a good all rounder. Backstroke was my weakest, and that was the one where you had to minimise the damage on the backstroke. If I was still in touch when I got to the end of the backstroke, I knew I was in with a chance.
Can we have the next question, please? So this is what you're currently doing. So what is it about presenting commentary for swimming that you enjoy the most?
Well, again, I touched a little bit on it. I like to think we give a little bit of expertise, and myself, and I think for the Rio Games there was 5 ex-Paralympians who did the swimming coverage for Channel 4, which was great, and there was 4 of us who did it for Tokyo as well. And I think we just bring an insight. I mean, the 5 or the 4 of us are all kind of different generations of Paralympian. I go back the furthest, and but there's other ones who have just retired, in London, for example, and we kind of bring a different perspective and a different insight to Paralympic sport. I mean, you can commentate on Paralympic sport if you've got a knowledge of the kind of mainstream swimming, the able-bodied swimming, but there are certain nuances that you need experts there to point out, and that's what I love to do. I've kind of lived the sport. I've got a little bit of knowledge about it. I still keep up to date. It's great still to be involved with Paralympic swimming, and I just love to continue to be involved, and it's a great privilege to watch these people, these Paralympians, just continue to improve year on year.
You have the next question, please. Oh, what's your favourite Olympic sport to watch? You might be a wee bit biased here.
Olympic sport. I do like watching the swimming. Yeah, I was I was up kind of through the night watching the Olympic team when they were in Tokyo last year. As I said, I like kind of all sports. I like watching the athletics as well. It's always good to watch. I love watching the curling a couple of weeks ago. For the Olympic guys, I watched a little bit of it today actually for the wheelchair curlers. We're on earlier. I mean, as I said, myself and my brother were always into all sorts of sports. We love watching football. We went to football games as well. We'd play around with a golf club. We'd have the tennis rackets out when it was Wimbledon, as a lot of people did. And I just love watching sport. And people used to say about Paralympic sport, just on a slightly different track, that you know, we can't put the Paralympics on television because, you know, people won't want to see people with a disability and blah, blah, blah. And you say, well, people watch it because if Great Britain are being successful, doesn't matter what you know, people watch Great Britain being successful at various things, you know, and that's where you get your audience. You create it into a competition. It's always very tight competition.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, people will watch that all day of the week.
I think we've got one last question that's just coming up now. So yeah, a nice way to finish. I'm sure there may be people with disabilities watching this just now. What would you say to these people who may really want to try sports, but they don't know how to get started?
Well, just contact your local branch of in Scotland. It's Scottish Disability Sport. The British Paralympic Association, the Paralympics GB, they'll have contacts for local sport. The network goes kind of all over the country. There's Activity Alliance, I think it is, in England, who do a lot of competitions, and they also provide training opportunities as well. There are lots of come and try days as well. You don't have to commit yourself to one sport just because you try it in the early days. There are taster sessions and various things. Yeah, I say don't be shy. Just get involved. There are places out there you can contact. Say Scottish Disability Sport in Scotland, Activity Alliance in England. I think it's the Federation of Disability Sport in Wales as well. So lots of places you can go for advice, and lots of opportunities are out there.
That's brilliant. I mean, I could chat to you all day, Paul, but unfortunately that is all we've got time for this session. So I'd like to thank you so much for giving up your time to be with us here as part of the Curious About Festival. Thank you to everyone at home or in the clubs or whatever who've been watching this. We hope you have enjoyed the session. If you missed any of it or you arrived a little bit late, the full session will be available on the Glasgow Science Centre Curious About website. We've got some more live sessions tomorrow from 9 a.m. But for now, thanks once more to Paul Noble, and we will see you all soon. Thank you.